So there's a new clothing line that also sells accessories. It's called Perry Purnell. You can check them out at apparelnow.com/Perry-Purnell, Pernell. That's Pernell -apparel. So it's apparelnow.com/Perry-Purnell-apparel. And on this website, they have everything from hats to accessories, men's, women's, and youth. And right now, there's a shirt sale for 25% off. Everything is also customizable, so no matter what size you are, they will customize it to fit you. So again, check out Perry Purnell at apparelnow.com/Perry-Purnell-apparel.
Welcome to the NXT Podcast, your home for weekly NXT reviews and insight.
The beautiful part of NXT is that when one dream ends, another dream begins.
Find all of your NXT news, recaps, and analysis right here. So with that being said, we only have one question for you.
Are you ready?
We thought so. Let's get the show started right now.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the NXT Podcast. Once again, I am your host. My name is Zachary Smith. I want to thank you for joining me again this week to talk about NXT. Now, as you know or may not know, I don't know you, you can always find me on Twitter. I am at ZachNXT, ZACHNXT. We're always talking about wrestling over there. Fun place to be. It's where all the cool kids are, and if you want to be cool, that's what you'll do. Now, we have an interesting episode here. Now, for this episode, the main selling point, this is the Super Tuesday edition, where we're going to have a 60-minute Iron Man match. We have Tommaso Ciampa, we have Johnny Gargano, we have Finn Balor, and we have Adam Cole. Fatal 4-way, 60-minute Iron Man match, the winner of which was supposed to be the new NXT champion. Now, this is something that kind of had to get thrown together. Obviously, Karrion Kross beat Keith Lee for the NXT title, but then Karrion Kross got hurt in that match and had to relinquish that championship. And all things considered, they came up with a pretty good idea having this fatal 4-way with the former NXT champions. It was a good idea. Now, slight problem there is that this match didn't come off exactly the way that they wanted it to, and we'll talk about why in just a minute. As you know, we usually cover news and notes, what's going on in WWE before we do get started. Now, there's nothing particularly going on that's pressing in the world of wrestling, but there's been a lot of negative in WWE, and I've been certainly a part of that. But there are some good things going on right now that I just wanted to highlight. We do have some pretty good stuff going on the main roster at the moment. Drew McIntyre won the WWE title at WrestleMania, and he is the champion during a pandemic where there are no fans. Now, sometimes when somebody becomes a champion, they don't change very much. So Kofi Kingston was still the same guy when he won the WWE title. It didn't feel like the WWE title elevated him. And I suppose that is because they never really saw Kofi as a WWE champion. The fans just demanded it. They got a fantastic moment at WrestleMania, which is one of my favorite wrestling moments that I've ever seen with him winning the title. But then it kind of fizzled from there. They didn't seem to have a lot of motivation behind his challengers and programs he was doing, so it didn't feel as important. Now, Drew McIntyre has had a couple matches, so example with Dolph Ziggler, that haven't felt very important, but for the overwhelming majority of the time, he has felt like an important champion. He's felt like a more important guy than he ever has been in WWE. He's been a fantastic champion. And part of that is because Drew is just very good as a babyface and is able to elevate that championship and vice versa. But a lot of it is because they clearly very much believe in Drew McIntyre, and Vince believes in him, And so because they do, they're going out of their way to put him in advantageous positions, and he is knocking it out of the park every time he is out there. And he's in the middle of what's probably his best feud, aside from with Brock Lesnar, which is Randy Orton. And Randy Orton is a guy who is maybe one of the most naturally talented in-ring performers ever, but he's also one of those guys where you can kind of tell when he's coasting or when he's not into something. When he is into something, it's fantastic. When he's not, he's just kind of bland. And clearly, everything he did with Edge really lit a spark in him, because even now with Edge being hurt, Randy Orton is doing some of the best work of his career. So he's a fantastic heel and a legitimate challenger for Drew in the WWE title. They had their match at SummerSlam. That was fantastic, but they had a finish that was just a backslide of Drew pinning Randy so that they could have another match. So you're going to be setting up for Randy Orton versus Drew McIntyre 2, which should also be fantastic. I personally would not like for Randy Orton to have the WWE Championship. I just don't think that he needs it. I think Drew needs it more than he does. But if Orton were to win, you would at least have a motivated Randy Orton that's doing the best work, or some of the best work, of his career. So you have an interesting feud for your championship, and it feels important. There's a couple bumps in the road on this. Before Edge got hurt, Randy Orton very specifically said he wasn't going after the WWE title. He said he didn't need it. He said it wasn't important to him. So it is odd that he's now challenging for it, but plans change. And I'm still somebody who thinks that championships are important. I am sometimes in the minority in that opinion, but I think that if you're going to have champions, then they need to feel important. Otherwise, there is no point. And in this case, it very much feels like Drew McIntyre will do anything to keep the WWE Championship, and it feels like Randy Orton will do anything to take the WWE Championship, which I think is fantastic. I think that's what you need, and I think that's kind of the point. Speaking of Randy Orton, he had an opponent at Payback. He had Mr. Keith Lee, who made his debut just the other week. Now, we started off not super great. I'm not going to lie to you because I respect you too much. Keith Lee came out. His music changed to just the most generic thing. I was going to hum it for you, but I literally just listened to it a second ago so I could hum it to you, and I have already forgotten it. It's gone from my memory as soon as I hear it. That is not something that generally happens, but he has the entrance music of an enhancement talent from 2004 on Velocity or something. It's not great, I'm not going to lie to you again. He also came out that first week in what appeared to be they were either shorts that were too baggy, but they really just looked like a tennis skirt. And I don't know if you've ever seen a very intimidating man wearing a tennis skirt, but he ceases to be a very intimidating man, which I had never considered before. I didn't think I'd have to put those words in that order in my head, but I had to, so you have to. And it kind of put a sour taste in a lot of fans' mouths. However, he also was wearing a shirt, like a sleeveless shirt. That part bothered a lot of people. Didn't really bother me. It's not that different. It's just a shirt. Now, fans were concerned that he wasn't being presented seriously already. Those were valid concerns. There's still concerns with his music because it's not special. There was concern with the ring gear. There was concern about, well, everything. But on the positive side, on that Raw, in the Thunderdome, and Thunderdome's not making my list of good things in wrestling, he challenged Randy Orton. And that made me a bit nervous just because Randy Orton is on quite a roll right now, and he just lost at SummerSlam, and so you would think that they would not want to necessarily have Randy Orton lose twice in two pay-per-views, especially considering Payback was 1 week after SummerSlam, for some odd reason that I am not quite sure of. But we got the match at Payback, and we had heard reports that Vince and WWE are very high on Keith Lee and want to, quote, push him to the moon, and this and that. And Randy Orton's job was to make Keith Lee look like a big deal. And boy, oh boy, did he ever. Keith Lee whooped Randy Orton and beat him clean in the middle of the ring. That is huge. Usually in a situation like that in WWE, what you can expect is that Keith Lee puts up a valiant effort. He has Randy Orton on the ropes the whole time, but Randy Orton ekes out a win by the skin of his teeth. And in their way of thinking, he put up a good fight. In our way of thinking, he loses his debut match and doesn't feel as important. Well, in this case, they did what they usually do not do, and they had the new guy go and win. And I think that sets up Keith Lee beautifully, and I think that Keith Lee's going to have a very bright future. This is the kind of NXT call-up that works because you know that Vince really, really likes Keith Lee. I don't know if that started at Survivor Series when he was the last member of Team NXT and went against Seth Rollins and Roman. I don't know if it was the Royal Rumble where he got that huge reaction just for going at it with Brock Lesnar. But at some point along the way, Vince McMahon fell in love with Keith Lee. And when Vince McMahon falls in love with a talent, that's very good for that talent. Keith Lee's fantastic on the mic. Keith Lee's fantastic in the ring. Keith Lee's going to be a WWE or Universal Champion before too long. And that's going to be really exciting. And it's good to see an NXT call-up work out because they don't have the best track record with it. And also at Payback, we had ourselves a triple threat match. So The Fiend just won the Universal title back at SummerSlam. So we have The Fiend defending that title against the former champion, Braun Strowman, and the returning Roman Reigns. Most interesting wrinkle here is that after years of teasing it, Roman Reigns is in fact a heel. He is a bad guy, and he is a Paul Heyman guy. We saw Paul Heyman in Roman's dressing room that last week when Adam Pearce was trying to get him to sign the contract for the triple threat match. And this match was, for its entirety, just The Fiend versus Braun Strowman. We didn't see Roman. They break the ring, copying the Big Show Brock Lesnar spot where the ring collapses. It's always a cool spot. It's not as good just because it's now the third time I believe I've seen it. Big Show Brock Lesnar, Big Show Mark Henry, Braun Strowman, Big Show, and now this one. I'm not super proud that I was able to do that off the top of my head, but I'm also not proud. It's an odd confluence of emotions. But after the ring breaks, Roman comes out with Paul Heyman. He signs the contract that he didn't want to sign at first and gets in the ring, and Roman Reigns wins and becomes your Universal Champion. He pins Braun Strowman. Now, people were divided as to whether they liked that or not. A lot of people had the automatic reaction of Roman Reigns just winning and The Fiend only being the champion for a week. But I think this actually works out beautifully. You have Braun Strowman, who is the former Universal Champion. It seems by all accounts that his reign was less than overwhelming. And I actually don't think that has anything to do with Braun Strowman. I think Braun Strowman did as good of a job as anybody could have been expected to do in that situation. By that I mean, if this were the Braun Strowman of 2016 or 2017, this title reign would have been fantastic. And that's because WWE was pushing him as a monster, as unstoppable. He was flipping cars and doing all these things every week. And then they had him mix it up with Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, and they had him get title opportunities, and he lost. This is the same thing that happened to Shinsuke Nakamura. It's happened to a lot of people. When you challenge repeatedly for a title, it happened to Samoa Joe. When you challenge multiple times for a title, and you are not able to win any of those times, it doesn't really matter how close you get to winning. You just become kind of a loser in people's perspectives. So for all of Braun Strowman's great work and his improvement in the ring, which is very evident, all that people could really see is this character that never quite got the job done. And there's something irksome and annoying about somebody who doesn't get the job done, especially when you really want them to. And Braun Strowman of a few years ago, people were clamoring for him to win the Universal or WWE Championship. Well, he was put in a terrible spot where he was Roman's last-minute replacement at WrestleMania. He beat Goldberg in a match that wasn't particularly well laid out, but in fairness to him, he's wrestling Goldberg, who at no point in his career was ever a good wrestler. So you weren't going to get like a good match. Roman wouldn't have gotten anything much better than that because it's Goldberg. You got out without being injured, so that's probably a win. Goldberg didn't hurt his opponent or himself, so as Goldberg goes, that was pretty good. But he had a lackluster match, and then his title reign felt kind of aimless, and he starts mixing it up, if I can speak them English words good. He starts mixing it up with Bray Wyatt, and they have a very interesting feud where Braun beats the other versions of Bray, but then he has to deal with The Fiend. And Braun very much took it to The Fiend in their match at SummerSlam, but The Fiend finally beat Braun Strowman. So Braun Strowman gets to go out of the title picture anyway on a very good story, and with the documentary that came out on the WWE Network, I like Braun Strowman just as a person because I know him a lot better now than I did. And I think that while this title reign might have been underwhelming, it's still a big deal to me that you're a former Universal or WWE champion. That's just always going to mean something to me. And so we have The Fiend, who just won the championship. Again, he was in a great story with Braun Strowman. They're involving Alexa Bliss. To what degree, we don't really know yet, but Alexa's doing a really good job with it, and I like the pairing of Alexa Bliss and The Fiend. I don't know where they're going with it, but we'll have to see. And The Fiend is still as great a character as ever. They haven't used The Fiend a lot. They've used him very sparingly, which is smart, because the less I see The Fiend, the more I want to see him. And you can't just... It's a little bit like The Undertaker, where you don't necessarily have him on every week. That's why you have Bray Wyatt. And The Fiend did exactly what Bray Wyatt said he would do, and he won the championship. And while it does suck that The Fiend was only champion for a week, by putting the championship on The Fiend, you run into the same problem you had the last time, which is, how do you get the championship off of this monster who's a crazy dude with a mask? You could build somebody up to that point, but you're not probably going to wait until the next WrestleMania. So the next best way I would think to do it is to have an underhanded heel butt kicker like Roman Reigns come in and win in a cheap way, didn't pin The Fiend, so The Fiend can still have an issue with Roman or Braun or move on to something else. So I think that this was the one way to do this without actually hurting The Fiend, which I'm surprised because, as you know, I am very much a homer for The Fiend. He's probably my favorite character that I've ever seen in wrestling. He's just very unique, and his segments are always the most interesting to me. But while I do not like that he was champion for a week, I think that this is probably the best way to kill a few birds with this stone and get the title off of him, give him an issue, and not hurt him in the process. And then the best part of this is Roman Reigns. So first and foremost, Roman Reigns is back. I've been a big Roman Reigns fan, and the only issues that I've had is some of the WrestleMania matches and spots that they would put him in. His match with Triple H, where they tried so hard to make Roman the babyface, and it always makes me laugh when old-timers will say, oh, if I got in there with Roman Reigns, I would make him the babyface and have fans cheering him. There's an arrogance to some people who are older wrestlers that they feel like because they wrestled in front of a crowd, they had the innate ability every time to have the crowd eating out of the palm of their hands, and they're basically super powered people. And I think that that's overstated a lot of the time, and I think that's very easy to say. And I heard a lot of people coming out of the woodwork when Roman Reigns' booing was at its highest with people saying, oh, these kids with their lack of psychology, they don't know what they're doing. I could go in there and make Roman the most beloved babyface. No, you couldn't. No, you couldn't, because you are not like a gift or a god or a Hercules of the ring. You don't actually control the fans. You can go out there and try stuff, but if fans have made up their mind, you're not going to change it. And so not even Triple H could make them change their mind. He would have matches with The Undertaker after Brock had already beaten him, so it meant just about nothing. I know in the documentary they played it up like this big deal and he might have retired, but once The Undertaker was no longer undefeated at WrestleMania, facing The Undertaker at WrestleMania didn't mean a lot. He was in countless matches with Brock Lesnar where they just wouldn't put the title on him and it felt like we kept extending it longer than we needed to. My point is, Roman was put in a lot of bad situations. And the most interesting thing that you could have done with him is to make him a heel, and then by the time everything finished up, he could have been a babyface. That's usually what happens with heels. They get over as heels, they turn, and then they're beloved babyfaces.
You're listening to the WWE Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
So there's a new clothing line that also sells accessories. It's called Perry Purnell. You can check them out at apparelnow.com/Perry-Purnell, Pernell. That's Pernell -apparel. So it's apparelnow.com/Perry-Purnell-apparel. And on this website, they have everything from hats to accessories, men's, women's, and youth. And right now, there's a shirt sale for 25% off. Everything is also customizable, so no matter what size you are, they will customize it to fit you. So again, check out Perry Purnell at apparelnow.com/Perry-Purnell-apparel.
Welcome back to the WWE Podcast. Let's get back to more great wrestling audio.
Now, since he took his break in the interest of his family's safety, and now he's back, he's a heel. He's very clearly a bad guy. He's more arrogant. He's not smiling to the crowd. He's very businesslike. He's very underhanded, and most importantly, he's with Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman is strictly an on-air talent now because Vince doesn't like when people have different ideas. I don't know. Every story I've heard about Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon indicates to me that Vince McMahon does not like to be challenged on things, despite being the kind of guy that would absolutely loudly challenge you on things, which is just, gotta tell you, just one of my least favorite guy archetypes. So, as a result of that, Paul Heyman is strictly an on-air talent, but we haven't seen Brock Lesnar, and we always see Paul Heyman with Brock Lesnar. Well, looks like Paul Heyman is now the advocate for somebody new, and that's Roman Reigns. That does a lot of things. That takes some of the weight of promos and building matches off of Roman and puts it onto Paul Heyman, who's one of the best talkers in any wrestling company in the world. And it allows Roman Reigns to be a heel, but to be a very low-key, love-to-hate them heels, because if Roman had just come back and won the title immediately, fans would have still turned on that. But all that I have heard about this is, man, it's cool that Roman's a heel, and man, it's cool that he's with Paul Heyman. Putting him with Paul Heyman is the best way that you could have done this, and it makes Roman Reigns the most interesting he has been. And we've been clamoring for him to be a heel, and he finally is. I would, for the record, like to point out something that a lot of people don't mention, that Roman has been a heel before. Now, obviously, in FCW, their old developmental territory, when he first came in, he was a heel. But Money in the Bank 2016 is best remembered for Roman Reigns losing to Seth Rollins becoming the WWE Champion, and then Dean Ambrose, now Jon Moxley, cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase that he won earlier in the night and becoming the WWE Champion. All three members of the Shield faction were WWE Champion on the same night. It was a great night. I remember watching it, but before we got to all that, we had a singles match between Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. And the story that they told was that Seth Rollins was the scrappy underdog who was fighting against the bigger Roman Reigns. In that match, Roman Reigns was a bully. He was cocky. He was talking crap. He was underhanded. He was throwing punches with a little stank on him. Roman Reigns was absolutely a heel for that program and for that match. I don't know why randomly he was a heel. I don't know if he and Seth got together and said, well, if they're going to boo, then we'll have you just be a heel. But Roman Reigns has been this character. Go watch that match back at Money in the Bank. I think it was 2016. That's the Roman Reigns you see right now, is a heel who is just very confident in himself and is always in a bad mood. He did this about 4 years ago, and he was fantastic at it. And I'm real excited to see where this goes and to see SmackDown coming up on Friday, because that's just going to be great. Now, pointed out a lot of things that are going really well in wrestling right now, and part of the reason I did that is because not gonna lie to you guys, not super duper psyched about our NXT episode today. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to focus on our main event here, because that's what NXT's been promoting. That's what this whole Super Tuesday thing was built around. And it's the most important thing that's going on at the moment. So, again, we have Johnny Gargano, then Adam Cole, then Finn Balor, and then Tommaso Ciampa. Fatal 4-way, 60-minute Iron Man match. The person with the most pinfalls or submissions at the end of the match, or at the end of the 60 minutes, becomes your new NXT champion. Now, it is important to remember that they have pushed very hard that one of these men is going to be leaving as champion, and that they're setting up this match to determine the new NXT champion. I'm going to do something I don't normally do, and we're going to talk about the ending first. So, if you haven't watched it already, then go ahead and watch it. Pause this. Now, if you're still with me, at the end of this match, we do not have an NXT champion. What we do have is we have a singles match next week. We have Finn Balor and Adam Cole, who both ended up with 2 pinfalls. There's a few problems here. One, it's less interesting having a singles match after having a 4-way Iron Man match. It's lowering the stakes, and it's lowering the chaotic elements. And number 2, it feels really bad when you advertise a big main event and you intimate that it's somebody has to win, and it's all these former NXT champions in this match to finally decide who's the best and who's going to be the champion. And then you do this old school wrestling cop-out finish where you don't want to give them everything this week, brother. We got to save something for the next town. Well, there's no next town. There's a pandemic. You can't go anywhere. So this doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, Adam Cole and Finn Balor both got 2 pinfalls, and then this feels like an even bigger step. It doesn't feel like a continuation of a story. It feels like an old kind of carny wrestler trick of keeping you on the hook with, oh, well, no, there's no champion yet, but if you want to see who's going to be champion, tune in next week. And a lot of what I'm seeing is, no, I'm not going to tune in next week because I tuned in this week to see what the result was going to be, and you gave me nothing. So the other problem is that when you don't have a winner of a match like this, especially in an Iron Man match, it makes that entire match feel pointless. So the best that you can get out of this match is that they had a good match and they worked really hard. And that, sincerely, is fantastic. However, makes it kind of hollow when there was quite literally no point to the match at all. So I guess we're just going to wait. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. If I weren't doing the NXT podcast, I don't know that I'd be doing a report on it. I don't know that I would have watched the whole Iron Man match because I knew the result going in. I watched it just so that I could get a feel for it to talk about it today, but I don't think I would have watched it because, again, there would be no point. But it was still a pretty good match, and I say pretty good because I don't know if it's the crowd that was missing or the Iron Man match itself, because those are very tricky. This was good, not great. When it was first announced, I thought this might be one of the best matches in the history of NXT, with these 4 guys, with that stipulation, with that amount of freedom in a match. And for whatever reason, it just didn't end up that way. And I can't quite put my finger on why, but that's been kind of the general consensus. That's a tough word. That's a lot of S sounds in that word. So Johnny Gargano's out first. They have a chyron for each guy with their height and weight and a couple facts. So the one for Johnny says that he was the first Triple Crown winner in NXT history, and that he was NXT champion for 57 days. I remember his reign being short. I do not remember it being that short, and especially compared to the other 3 men in this match, Johnny was definitely the least accomplished NXT champion and the most underdoggy of the competitors in this match. 57-day reign is quite nothing compared to these other 3. Next up is Adam Cole. Also points out that he is a Triple Crown champion and that he was NXT champion for 403 days since he won it from Johnny, which is just a much more impressive reign and not super fun for Johnny to come out with his 57 and then send out Adam Cole his 403. Finn Balor's out next. His accomplishment that was listed, in addition to him being champion of NXT for 292 days, is that he's the first ever Universal Champion. That is one of those facts that looks good when you write it down. Oh man, first ever Universal Champion, and man, it is technically true, and on the face of it, that is an impressive thing. But boy, it's not, because he had it for one day, got injured, and had to relinquish it, and that sucked. To put that he was the first ever Universal Champion is misleading to how we all remember that story, because we were all very excited to see Finn Balor on Raw, and then he beat Roman Reigns clean in the middle of the ring when they were mad at Roman Reigns for a little bit, and then he beat Seth Rollins at SummerSlam when the crowd was busy booing the championship being red, which I always loved the fans for because it was not great. And then in that match, Finn gets hurt and immediately has to give up the title. So as somebody who went through that, when I saw first ever Universal Champion, I got sad, which I don't think is what we were going for. Also occurs to me that Finn is the closest thing we have to a babyface in this match. I don't think he is. I think he's slowly turning, but he's the closest that we have. He's the least of a jerk of these 4 guys. Which is interesting because that's a lot of heels to put in the same match, and I imagine that's tricky to work out, but they did a good job. Tommaso Ciampa is out last. He's in his new iron mask and leather jacket. I'm not sure why he has a mask. I mean, it looks kind of cool. I'm just not sure the significance of it. His highlights include that he was an NXT champion for 237 days, and his highlight was that he was the victorious War Games captain. And Ciampa's had a weird career because that feels to me like the wrong highlight to put for him, but I also don't know what highlight I would put. Ciampa's had a lot of cool moments that I wouldn't pick as his one moment. It's weird. I was trying to think of the thing to put there, and I couldn't think of one, but I know it's not winning the War Games match. I know that's not the right one, but I can't think of a better one, so I can't talk too much crap. So Johnny slides out of the ring immediately. I always love when a heel does that, just immediately bails. That and the move where they get out of the ring and then they try to take a timeout are my favorite bad guy moves. Iron Man matches are weird because there is an inherent lack of drama, because wrestling unwritten rules state that people will either be tied in falls near the end, or that at the very least somebody's going to make a comeback. The end is going to be the most dramatic part. It's kind of like a close basketball game where really the important part is the last few minutes. Making it a 4-way is a good way to spice that concept up, but it's definitely a challenge, especially an hour-long one. I think that was a problem. I think the other problem is that it was a fatal 4-way, and they did the fatal 4-way like WWE does a fatal 4-way or a triple threat, which is to say one or two people are knocked out on the side of the ring and have to do that thing where they're selling, but really they're just like on a knee looking up for when they're supposed to come in. So for 99% of this match, there would be two guys, so Adam Cole and Finn Balor would be in the ring fighting, and then Johnny and Tommaso just had to hang out outside the ring while they did their moves, and then somebody would come in and switch out. And so it felt less like a fight or a match, and it felt more like, okay, we're going to go do our stuff, and then we're going to do our stuff, and then we're going to do our stuff. So I guess that's part of the problem. So Adam Cole misses the Panama Sunrise on Johnny, and Finn Balor comes in, and he starts hitting the 1916? I think that's right. Johnny kicks Finn in the head. He interrupts the move. I have no idea why you would do that. You could just let him hit it and then steal the pin, but that's fine. A little bit later, Finn Balor hits the coup de grace on Adam Cole, and with 34 minutes left in the match, Finn Balor has one fall, and the first fall of the match. So later, Ciampa hits Finn Balor with the fairy tale ending, but Johnny sneaks up, throws Ciampa out of the ring, and pins Finn Balor. So with 26 minutes left, Johnny and Finn each have one fall. A little bit later, Panama Sunrise by Adam Cole to Johnny, and with 24 minutes left, Adam Cole's on the board. Everyone has one fall except Ciampa. Ciampa hits the apron DDT on Adam Cole, and Johnny Gargano hits the fairy tale ending to Adam Cole. 22 minutes left. We're all tied with one fall. So Finn, at the end here, hits Ciampa with the coup de grace. So with 20 seconds left, everyone has one fall. Finn has two. So Finn is like on his knees. It kind of looks like he's running out the clock and just kind of not quite celebrating, but getting excited. And they do that cool thing that WWE does where somebody comes into frame that we did not see until the moment of impact. That's always a cool shot. In this case, we're looking at Finn Balor, and all we see is Adam Cole running in, and he hits the last shot, the knee to the back of the head of Finn Balor as he's not looking, and Adam Cole pins him. And I think he pinned him with like 3 seconds left. The ref had to count a little bit fast to make sure we got it, but right on time. That has to be the most stressful thing ever. They've done it in a few Iron Man matches and beat the clock challenges where the person gets pinned with like 3 seconds left, so it's literally the last second. I would be so scared that I would mess up the timing and I would be just a little bit too late, and we would have to like abandon the whole thing because I'm so sure I'm so sure I would mess that up. It made me nervous watching it, and I had nothing to do with it except talking about it right now. So, as time expires, Adam Cole gets a fall. So, if you're keeping up at home, Johnny Gargano has one fall. Tommaso Ciampa has one fall. Those dudes are losers. Get them out of here. Adam Cole has 2 falls. Finn Balor has 2 falls. Time has expired. William Regal comes out and makes the decision that next week, again on Super Tuesday, I'm not sure what's super about the next Tuesday, we're going to have a one-on-one match. Finn Balor, Adam Cole, and the winner's going to be the new NXT champion. Now, as you can see, I ran through this. I didn't hit a ton of the highlights. There weren't a ton to me. I think that knowing the finish of this match really influenced my enjoyment of it. I don't regret finding out what happened. I just kind of stumbled upon it. I would much rather have known than to have kept my hopes up for there being a winner. But I think the lack of any kind of winner of this match really brought this down for me. I think if there had been a clear winner and there had been a crowd, obviously, this would have been a very different animal. But it just fell flat for me because I knew there was going to be no resolution at the end of this. And it weirdly feels a little insulting that they built this up as such an important end point and then to just kind of pull the rug from under you. Sometimes people who make decisions like that will kind of laugh or guffaw at that kind of thing, saying, oh, kept you on the line and, pulled the rug out from under you, almost like it's a good thing. And sometimes it is, but sometimes when you're doing it in a story and the bad guy pulls the rug out, that's one thing. When you advertise a match whose sole purpose is to determine a new champion, and then you have like a kind of cop-out finish just to lead to another match because you want a good rating the next week too, it feels like you think I'm stupid, and it feels like you think that I'm just going to keep coming back and I'm going to be excited. I will absolutely watch next week, because who else is going to give you this awesome podcast? Nobody. But if I were just a regular fan, I don't know that I would watch, because a storyline is a different thing than just advertising something to me that you didn't deliver on. And at a certain point, that's just not a good business decision. But on the bright side, next week we should have a very good match between Finn Balor and Adam Cole. I see no reason to put the championship back on Adam Cole. He just had it. I don't think there's anything else he's going to be able to do with it. I think it's time for Finn Balor to be the champ. I thought it would either be Finn or Tommaso Ciampa. I'm actually surprised it's not Finn Balor and Ciampa. That's what I thought it was going to be, as the two kind of leading in when I thought there would be a winner. But I think next week we're going to see Finn Balor as our NXT champion, and I think that's a cool full circle for Finn, from leaving NXT to going to the main roster to getting hurt to them no longer taking him seriously, to The Fiend beating him down at SummerSlam last year, to going back to NXT. I didn't think he would be NXT champ again. I thought he was just going to be there as an elder statesman of NXT for a bit. But I think next week we're going to get the chance to see Finn Balor as your NXT champion, and that is always exciting. But I hope that next week it'll also be more exciting, and I have more things to bring you about NXT. Like I said, we just focused on the main event here because that was the important thing, but we should have more to talk about next week, and so I hope that you will join me next week. Now, again, if you forgot, I don't blame you. Again, you can always find me on Twitter. I'm ZachNXT, ZACHNXT. Let me know what you thought of the main event of this week's NXT. Let me know what you think about Finn Balor and Adam Cole next week. Who do you think should win? How would you have liked to see this match turn out of these four guys? Anybody you wanted to win? I'd love to hear your thoughts. A lot of the stuff we talk about on Twitter ends up in the show, so drop me a line over there. In the meantime, this has been the NXT Podcast. I have been Zachary Smith. You have been fantastic. Thank you for listening.
So there's a new clothing line that also sells accessories. It's called Perry Purnell. You can check them out at apparelnow.com/Perry-Purnell, Pernell. That's Pernell -apparel. So it's apparelnow.com/Perry-Purnell-apparel. And on this website, they have everything from hats to accessories, men's, women's, and youth. And right now, there's a shirt sale for 25% off. Everything is also customizable, so no matter what size you are, they will customize it to fit you. So again, check out Perry Purnell at apparelnow.com/Perry-Purnell-apparel.